Good morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm John Pope. I'm our MBA president this year. And first of all, I want to thank all the MBA members that are joining us on our first ever member webinar. It's definitely an interesting time that we're working in the construction industry. A lot of us have projects that are shut down. Just trying to keep our heads above water, in doing the right thing by maintaining social distancing and, you know, trying to minimize the curve. So I just wanted to welcome everybody, and just kind of one of the things that we've been working with the MBA board and the MBA staff is really to make sure we've got constant communication with our members and updating everybody as to what's going on in the industry, specifically what's happening in our local area, Marin, and then also, trying to keep focused on, what we need to do now as the contractor builder community, and then also what we're going to need to be doing in the future. So that's kind of today, the goal of today's webinar is really to focus on those topics. I want to just touch on a couple things that the MBA board and staff have been doing. As far as recently, myself, Rick Wells, Clayton Fraser from Thompson Builders, and Dave Trahan from Patriot Mechanical helped out the county. The county had approached me as part of my other duties and volunteering for the county on the search and rescue team, had reached out and said, we're looking at some surge hospital sites. We've identified options to look at, and we would love the MBA's help in identifying if these facilities make sense for our use. So Rick, myself, Dave, and Clayton all met with some representatives of Marin County's real estate and Marin County Health and Human Services and the Emergency Operations Center to go through a facility they identified and do some very rough ROM pricing for improvements that the site could be used as a hospital to fit into the county's plan. So that's just an example of how the MBA is staying involved and kind of working with all of the stakeholders, not just our members, but also the county in general. And Rick will have some more things to follow up on what we're doing with that. And another example is, Rick and I sat in on the Building Women event. And so as the MBA, we have a lot of committees and subgroups that do different things. It was really interesting just to hear that perspective and how people are, pivoting with their business, what they're focusing on now, whether it's marketing or other things to be able to move forward in the near future. So that's kind of it just all plays into the personal experiences we're having. And for example, right now, just personally me, it's been an interesting experience working with our customers and looking at PPP loans and figuring out the HR processes that we need to deal with, with being shut down and being ready to maintain as we move forward. So I want to, so with today's agenda, I'm going to turn it over to Rick Wells, our CEO, and let Rick take it from here.
All right, John, thanks. Appreciate the intro. If we've not had a chance to meet, my name is Rick Wells. I'm the CEO here at the Builders Association. Today's going to be a fast-paced 30 minutes. We're going to let you get back to your day. You will have a chance to email your thoughts, questions, or feedback directly to me or to Dan after this webinar by replying to the resource page that we send out to you with the key points from today's meeting. Also, we're planning to record the webinar and post it to our COVID response page. With that, we're gonna get started. I'm gonna share my screen here and let you know that I have a few comments, and then we're gonna hand it over to our featured presenter, Dan McLennon. So local construction related resources at marinbuilders.com. Originally, we went up when the first shelter in place order was posted. We've updated it every day since then. We've got great feedback about the information from standards of operation for those essential businesses still working to resources for those who have closed their business and are looking for assistance and next steps. We're curating with simple and specific to construction in mind whenever possible. And I'll send you out the page link as part of the follow-up. And also don't forget our event calendar, which is now populating with online events intended to help benefit our industry and our members. Little reminder, we're still figuring out new ways to make it work and help our business run despite the shelter in place. 2 quick highlights in addition to the weekly or twice weekly updates you receive from us. Our annual scholarship program is moving forward. We've extended our deadline to May 4th for applications for high school seniors. If you know of any, please encourage them to apply. I'll send everyone the link as a follow-up today. As well, our Permit Simplicity initiative continues to move ahead in Novato and Tiburon. The recent shelter in place has provided us an opportunity to explore some new approaches being implemented across jurisdiction, including online submittals and virtual inspections that we think will carry through well beyond this shelter in place. More to come on that initiative this summer. We felt it's important for you to know that today our 2020-2021 Marin Home Resource Guide is scheduled to proceed. It was delayed by a few weeks, but it is going to be complete in print and digitally by the end of June. If you are positioning your business to be ready to accept new customers this summer and fall, this might be a good marketing option for you. Ironically, our theme this year going into this, before this all started, was building during uncertain times. And we think this content is going to resonate with local homeowners and the construction industry as well. Folks have been home planning their projects during this shelter in place, and our guide is going to release right as they are ready to get into action, and our members will be top of mind for them. Just a reminder, connect with us and one another on our Facebook and our LinkedIn pages. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Dan McLennon. Dan is our 2019 president of the Builders Association. He's managing partner at the San Francisco office of Smith, Curry & Hancock. Dan's got over 3 decades of experience in construction law, and he is active in numerous trade associations, and he provides an interesting and unique intra and interstate view of the construction industry. So with that, I will turn it over to Dan. Dan, you can share your screen.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Hi, everybody. I'm going to disappear here, and you're going to see my screen. Give you the maximum real estate that we have available. Okay. Call up the PowerPoint. How's that, Rick? Are we visible?
Good. Good to go.
Thanks. We've got a lot of material to cover today. I'm going to go pretty quickly. What we did was we solicited questions from the membership, and many of you responded. And I took the top 7 and combined a few to hopefully answer your questions. There's a lot of material here. We will be sending a follow-up bulletin for you to have this all in one place with live links to the sites that we are going to be talking about. So first, we've seen contractors that are still working, and why is this happening with restrictions in place and known safety hazards? How are they getting away with it? We'll talk about that. What are my options for suspended, unfinished projects? What financial assistance is available to help keep contractors afloat? Do I lose forgiveness under the Paycheck Protection Program if I have to lay off people or reduce wages? And what rules must essential contractors follow on continuing construction sites? What best practices are we seeing on projects that are continuing to operate? And what's the next? What's next regarding the relationship between the client and the builder? And then finally, when are we going to go back to work? So before we get into the questions, there is actually a little bit of good news that I'd like to share with you. Going back to March 18, we have a letter from our governor to the President of the United States asking for the president to deploy the USNS Mercy hospital ship to be stationed off of the Port of Los Angeles as another emergency hospital facility. And in the right side, you see that they are projecting, we were projecting at that time on March 18, that half of our population was expected to become infected with the virus over an 8-week period. So figure by the end of April, they were thinking that half of our state's people would be infected. But in truth, the restrictions that we're under are actually working. As of April 16, as of April 15, there were only 26,000 positive cases and 890 deaths in the state of California. I say only, all of those infections and deaths are significant, but the good news about it is it's way less than what we were anticipating. This is now a full month after that prognostication of 25 million people being infected. We only have about 26,000. Yeah, we're not done having people become infected, but the rate is substantially slowed. So there is a silver lining in the tough restrictions that we are all suffering. All right, why are some contractors still working? Well, there are reasons. As we all know, that there are certain construction sites that are deemed essential. Originally, back at when the restrictions first came out, all construction in the state of California was deemed essential. But as cases of infection continued, tightening happened, especially in the Northern California area. LA, for example, still doesn't have any restrictions on any construction other than the stay safe procedures, which we're going to talk about. But here up in the 7 northern counties, we have only certain parts of construction are deemed essential, and that's where we have healthcare facilities, affordable housing, temporary shelters, and this catch-all construction or repair necessary that ensures residences and essential businesses are safe, sanitary, or habitable if the work cannot reasonably be delayed. And so when we see workers out there, they may actually fall into one of these categories. Of course, we do know that certain people don't abide by the rules, and there are scofflaws, and the County of Marin is actually starting to gear up to issue citations. There are 1,700 outstanding permits presently, and they will be checking on those permits to see whether they are ongoing. I understand that as of yesterday, there were 15 citations already in the works on projects that are wrongfully continuing. What are my options for my suspended, unfinished projects? Well, even if the project's not essential, you still should be making sure that it's safe, sanitary, or habitable if the work needs to continue to make it safe or habitable. One thing that we do need to consider is ensuring that the site remains secure. Unfortunately, there's a lot of looting that's going on right now. What some of my clients are doing is posting 24/7 security, live security. Everybody's got cameras out there. Fencing is very typical. So you'll have to consider what security measures are appropriate for your particular project. Probably the biggest thing that needs to happen, and I'm going to say this more than once during this presentation, is that the stakeholders need to get together. For sure, the owner and the contractor. I'm suggesting also key subcontractors and suppliers to minimize impacts right now and to plan the restart. And minimizing impacts can include lining up materials to make sure that materials will be available when the restart happens. There's a lot to be said on that topic, but the key is the cooperation and the communication to talk about minimizing the problems and getting ready to go forward. Just remember too, as planning right now is going to be essential, because when construction really is allowed to proceed, there's going to be such a demand on materials and labor that the guys that are planning ahead are going to get ahead. What financial assistance is available to help keep contractors afloat? 2 days ago, I would have had a completely different slide. Today, I have some bad news for you. Probably everybody's heard already that the SBA is unable to take any new applications for the PPP program or the EIDL loans because they're oversubscribed. They've run out of money already. Two days ago, there was $100 billion left as far as what was being shown on the SBA page, their site. This citation that you see here is from their website. And by the way, there's a lot of material there. If you haven't been to the SBA's website, highly recommend it. There are tax relief possibilities. State of California has some programs to consider. And also, you're probably aware that your workers are entitled to some enhanced unemployment at this time. There's also health insurance programs that are available under the CARES Act. There's broad sweeping assistance for workers, at least, even though it's difficult at this point for contractors. There are SBA loans still available, the traditional program. It's just that the PPP program with the forgivable loans, those are oversubscribed at this time. My understanding is that there's a couple of bills pending right now in the federal government and the legislature to resubscribe perhaps another $350 billion for the PPP program. So keep your eyes on it. If you haven't gotten an application in yet, you still may have a chance. Unfortunately, I bank with Wells Fargo and put in my request for an application about 10 days ago. Yesterday, I got permission to submit an application. Well, thanks, Wells Fargo. Maybe that opportunity will come to fruition if additional funding happens. So there are other resources available on the SBA site. I've given you the citation there, the web address, and also my office has written extensively about the financial assistance available under the CARES Act. So I've given you our COVID-19 publications citation as well. So if you are one of the lucky ones that gets the PPP loan, what if I have to lay off people or reduce wages? Do I lose forgiveness under the PPP program? And the answer to that is no. I've written about this already on our website that you don't, as long as you rehire to the same extent of the layoffs. If you have layoffs after February 15, it's okay as long as you rehire as many people that you laid off. And they don't have to be the same persons that you bring back or rehire, but the number has to be the same. And the rule also applies if you have to make some payroll cuts. You want to keep everybody on board, but everybody's going to feel the pain a little bit by having some pay reductions. That's fine, as long as you reinstate those, reinstate their wage rates and use the money to pay those reinstated wage rates before June 30. So no, you don't lose your protection or your forgiveness. And again, we have writings on my website about how the loan program works. What rules must essential contractors follow on continuing construction sites? sites that are still operating? Well, that really depends on the location. There's nothing specific to Marin construction sites yet. Maybe there will be. There are some general rules which we'll talk about that have to be followed anyway. As of April 4, San Francisco issued their own requirements for very specific written plans that construction contractors have to follow for sites that are continuing in San Francisco. It's very detailed. And I've given you the site there if you're interested in looking at those details. Why would you do that? Well, because if you follow the San Francisco rules on a Marin site, that's probably going to be sufficient to cover your obligations. So what are those obligations? As an employer, generally, everybody knows this, that you have to provide your employees with a safe place to work, free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm. And the COVID definitely applies. So what are the standards that apply for dealing with COVID? Well, you have a citation here to the OSHA, COVID standards, and then also the CDC put out their own standards. And I've given you the Los Angeles Building Department publication that came out on, let's see, 2 days ago, April 15. It was revised. This is the LA Building and Safety Announcement number 5. I've got a copy of it in front of me here. And I cite this to you because it's thorough and concise. It's all in one place. You have 16 different things to do that if you follow these guidance, you will be in good shape in protecting your people. All right, so what best practices are you seeing on projects that continue to operate? What are the best practices? Communication, and lots of it. We have a project right now, San Francisco, down the peninsula from San Francisco. It's a sewer line. It's a 3-mile line, and it's essential public works. And the contractor initially started out to be very adversarial. I am the contractor, and they started to get into some trouble with the owner, starting to really get adversarial as well. And they hired me to see about making a claim, and we did a reset and say, hey guys, look, this is going to be a long haul, and we need to cooperate with each other. There's a lot that both sides can do, especially working with the subcontractors as well, to minimize the impacts. The owner has to give a little bit, the contractor and the subs are going to give a little bit, but everybody's going to come out better because the project will continue as fast as it can, and the contracting side will make money and the owner will save money on it. But if we get into the claim situation, everybody's going to be distracted and production is going to be suffering because of it. So communication is the best thing. Try to work together to mitigate the impacts. The other 2 little things here that we see are best practices are worker health certification form, self-certification, where the worker has to fill out a form every day they come onto the site. No, I don't have a fever. No, I haven't been exposed to anybody that I know of that has COVID-19. Nobody at my house. I don't have a cough. I don't have any respiratory distress or shortness of breath. There's about 7 questions on the form that my office created. I don't have a link to it. It's coming, but if anybody wants that self-certificate form, let me know and I will send a copy to you until we get it up on our website. That is coming. And then the other thing is, essential worker cards, which is it's a pocket-size little card that you as the employer can create. If you have essential work that's continuing, you create the card, laminate it, and give it to your workers so that they can keep it around in their wallet, so that if they're stopped coming or going to a work site, they have something that the police officer or health officer or whoever it is that's making the stop, they can show it to them. It gives their telephone number to the office, some person at the company that's readily available to speak to the officer and say, no, this is legit. We have permission to keep going. One other thing about that is, and I don't have a bullet point on it, but communication with the local authorities is also essential. They're the ones that are going to let you go or they're going to shut you down. And so if you think that the work that you need to do is essential to make safe a site or to make a residence habitable, clear it with the authorities. You get a lot more leeway if you do ask for permission rather than forgiveness in this case. So I would say get them involved, convince them of the safe practices that you're going to use, and you'll probably get a lot more cooperation out of the public officials to make sure that you can continue your ongoing project. What's next regarding the relationship between the client and the builder? Some owners and contractors will work cooperatively to mitigate and allocate the impacts, like the example I told you about. And that is a goal to strive for, trying to work together. Other projects will suffer claims and litigation over contract rights and obligations. That's the way that my project was headed while people had their necks up and they got stubborn and were ready to put on their sidearms and fight over contract rights. Owner to the contractor, you have an obligation to complete the work. Contractor to owner, no, I have a force majeure clause. This is an epidemic which is specifically excluded or included with my right to extra time under the contract. You fight about these rights. Maybe there's a force majeure clause, maybe there isn't. Maybe the force majeure clause includes epidemics or pandemics, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it includes government shutdowns, maybe it doesn't. Those are those types of issues that can come up. And you need to, as a contractor, you need to be aware of what rights you have under your contract. That's your starting point, but you can always give up your rights once you know them. And you can use your rights under your contract to say to the owner, really, you don't want to fight me on this because now let's work together, because of the language in my contract, you don't want to fight with me on it, but let's work together to make this work. You have power. Generally, the contractors have power under the AIA contracts and certainly under their own draft contracts to have extra time for the project, given the shutdowns and the impacts caused by the inefficiency of having to do the social distancing and all the other hygiene requirements. There will be impacts. And a lot of those are going to be covered in your force majeure clauses. By the way, even if you don't have a force majeure clause, I'll give you a citation to California Civil Code Section 1511, which is a statutory force majeure clause. So you may have recourse under the Civil Code, even if your contract doesn't provide for it. All right. When are we going back to work? I'm thinking it's going to be likely May 31st or later, per Governor Newsom's press release on April 14, 3 days ago. There's 4 goals that we are going to try to achieve is to make sure that we can care for our sick in the hospitals, preventing infection, building the capacity to protect the health of the public, and then reducing the toll and economic disruptions. Those four things need to align to be able to return to work. There's 6 indicators that he mentioned that we're going to be looking at, the state's going to be looking at and assessing whether or not we're there, whether or not we can loosen restrictions, and probably restrictions will be loosened instead of eradicated, and then they'll be loosened over time more gradually. He did say there is no precise timeline for modifying the order. These will serve as a framework for making the decision. Things will look differently as modifications are made over time. For example, on a gradual lessening, restaurants will be allowed to have seating, but the seating will be spread out, etc. So he said that he wouldn't even consider releasing or modifying the restrictions until probably mid-May. So if at that time he's considering it, it's going to take a couple more weeks to implement. So I'm thinking at the earliest, we're going to see something probably as June 1. So that's it. We're promising to get you out in a half an hour, and I will thank you for participating, and feel free to drop me a note if you have any questions or would like anything in follow-up.
Fantastic, Dan. Thank you. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you to both Dan and John and our 80 attendees that we had today. We will follow up with you by email with a list of resources with live links, including SBA loan forgiveness information and details. For example, on Monday, the SBA is hosting or SBDC is hosting a webinar specific to your questions about the payroll protection program and what's forgivable and what's not, as well as some other information from our scholarship to et cetera, everything that we've gone over today, including some of the citations that Dan mentioned. So with that, have a safe and healthy weekend, and thank you very much for being here today. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.